Welcome back. Today in the shop we have a 2003 Ford E350. The customer complaint is that the AC is inoperative. He had it somewhere else and they charged up the system and they also injected it with dye at the time. So today's find where the leak is should be relatively simple. Just using the UV light and the glasses we could try to pinpoint where that leak's at because someone already did the previous work for us. And we'll see the speckles on the tube. Now that's not saying I got a leak right there. That Schrader valve might be leaking a little bit. However, I know that's from their gauge set that they used. However, if you're starting from scratch, you're going to need a couple things. You're going to need the dye. You're going to have to inject the dye into the system because a small leak is really hard to find. Now you can use an electronic Freon leak detector, but at times it's hard to find it, especially if you have the engine running and whatnot and there's a lot of air movement in the area. It's hard to really pinpoint it. It's got a vacuum pump in there that's slowly drawing in the atmospheric air and looking for signs of that Freon. Now I can turn the sensitivity up, and I like turning it up as high as I can. Now I'll simply go over all the lines. But this is, you'll find this easier with the vehicle running when the system has a lot of pressure on it. And you'll have a lot of air movement, so it's really hard to pinpoint exactly where the leak's at. I'm hoping there's just enough that escapes out of this low side port. Right there. And that's what you'll hear and see when you come across the leak. My fail-proof method has always been the dye. So there's a couple different ways of injecting the dye. I always use a gauge set along with a 30-pound bottle. And how this would work, you would take your dye and you have an injector. And I use this on both methods. You can use this with the small cans or the 30-pound bottles. And you take your dye, you get your dye in different ways. This is straight up dye. You usually mix it with your PAC 34 or whatever your vehicle recommends for the AC oil to thin it out, and then you simply fill up this reservoir and you screw it back together. Or you could pick up a pre-mixed bottle of dye which has the PAC 34 oil along with the dye mixed in already. This is more convenient. This is the route I usually take. Same thing, you fill up that reservoir, screw it back together, get your setup all hooked up. You have your 20-ounce can of Freon on there or whatnot, hook it up to the system, charge it. You don't have to charge it 100%, just get it to the point where your AC compressor kicks on, and sometimes you got to drive it for a while. Sometimes it takes a week, sometimes it takes 5 minutes for that leak to show up, depending on the size of that leak. This one took about a month for it to leak down, so it would have been a relatively hard leak to find right away. Another method you can use is what they call a dye shot. This is pretty much in the same family as the small cans that you can pick up at, say, Walmart or an auto parts store. You always want to verify your pressure because you don't want to overcharge your system and whatnot. A lot of times you come in and it'll just be low enough that the AC compressor isn't kicking on, and these dye shots work really good. I've used these quite often. Simply hook it up to the low side, charge it up, and sometimes this little can's enough to get that AC compressor kicked on because you bring it up into the operating range of pressure. So actually, as a quick reference, I have my PT Cruiser here. So in this vehicle you can see I have my high and low side. See how big the high side is compared to the low side. If I try putting a cap on the high side, it'll never fit. We're going to take and start up the vehicle. Max AC. So if you take notice, the AC compressor is kicking on and off. That's because it's low on Freon and there's just not enough pressure there to maintain that low pressure switch. We have some pressure, but just not enough because we have a slow leak somewhere in this system. This is another bottle I found laying around, probably about halfway full. It's an 18 ounce. And we're going to take and see how much pressure we have on this system. See, I was jumping way up into the red, but when the AC compressor kicks on, it goes way down. So when that AC compressor is running, you got suction, and that's when it's really going to be an accurate reading. We're going to have to add some Freon. So now that I know it's a little low, I can take and put that dye shot in. This is that dye shot I showed you earlier. Hook it up to the low side. And then we're going to charge it. As you can see, the dye going into the system. Now we're going to hope for that AC compressor to kick on and run steady. Once that starts running steady, we still don't have quite enough Freon in there, so I know I'm not overcharging it. And every time that compressor kicks on, you'll see it try to suck some more out. So this bottle's just about spent. See, that's why you gotta be careful, guys. When you unplug it, it tends to spray out. You don't want that stuff everywhere when you're trying to find a leak. So you can see how fluorescent that is. I'm going to take this can, hook it up to the system. If you can catch it right when that compressor is kicking on, that's the best time to do it. I'm not going to have enough in this can. I like putting it in as a gas, so I try to hold it upright. You know, on these cans it tells you. See, we're starting to stay on longer, guys. Compressor's starting to stay engaged. We're not quite in the blue. The green is low. I know this gauge is really deceiving. I would say green is good, but blue is where it should be, is in the blue. I want it somewhere in the blue, that way it's not kicking on and off on me. But I'm going to let this one run a couple days as I continue to repair on the other van. Okay, now that we got it up in the blue, I'm not going to waste any more of this can. The AC compressor staying engaged, it's cycling our Freon throughout the system, and we should be able to pinpoint this leak before long. Okay, I know in the introduction I told you we'll be working on the E350, and we will be. However, I already found a leak on that one, so I don't want to waste a Freon. That's a large system, very large system. So now I'm just going to demonstrate how to use the injector with the bottle and a gauge set. Now, if you had a bottle, like a 20 ounce, 18 ounce bottle that would hook up to your gauge set, you could do that as well. However, I have the 30 pounder, so that's what I use. Now you'll notice on your gauge set, it has a quick connect, and when you tighten this up, it pushes in the Schrader. So we're going to loosen that all the way up. The injector also has a Schrader, but we're not going to pierce that Schrader yet, and I'll show you why. We can take and hook this up to our low side. Just like so. Always verify that your cap is tight on your injector and whatnot. And we're going to take and hook up the high side. And it's all the way backed out. We're not going to pierce it yet. I'm simply putting them on the fittings, the quick connects, on the ports, because there's an O-ring that seals this system so I can bleed my hoses and I'm not introducing air. So before I pierce the Schrader, we'll leave them loose. We'll take and hook up our bottle. Should have told you to make sure your valves are closed. I'm going to open up my tank. And I'm going to bleed my hoses. Because right now I'm sealed off 100% from atmosphere. However, these hoses are full of air. Safety first, guys. Should have done this earlier. Wear your safety glasses. Now we're going to bleed off some Freon from this one. What that did was just purge our supply line. And make sure all these are tight. In addition to that, I'm also going to purge my feed lines. So now I just applied pressure to this top portion. However, my Schrader's not pushed yet, so all I did was compress the air and Freon in this point. So now I'm just going to bleed this line just a little bit. And I could isolate it. Do the same thing with the high side. Just a little bit. And that just simply purges my lines out so I don't introduce air into the system. Even though it's not super critical at this point, because we're simply putting dye into the system. I don't have dye in this right now, guys, because I just injected dye. But this is just a demonstration, just to step you through the process if you're using this injector. At this point, I'm going to press it. Both high and low side. Now, when I screw this down, I'm taking and pushing that Schrader valve down. So now this is a complete system. Now we're going to start it up, turn the AC on max, just like before. However, the system isn't low because we just charged it with the cans. Now if you just seen that, this gauge jumped down when that AC compressor kicked on. And we were right around, what, 30? So on the other gauge. We're about 28, 25 on this one as well. Okay, so like I said, now we're a complete system and we're reading our system pressures, both high and low side. And what I see here right now is a bad sign. I'm seeing signs of a faulty compressor right off the bat. We almost have decent pressure on our low side, but very low pressure on our high side. I'm going to take and add just a little bit more Freon to the system, very slowly. I'm just going to bring it up to about 30 pounds. And you're just seeing it jump up as I open my bottle up because I'm introducing a higher pressure than what's in the system. But right now it would be injecting the Freon. Okay, I'm right around 30 pounds. But when I turn that on, the Freon would have been coming from my bottle up through my supply line, through the low side, through that injector, injecting the dye into the system. However, I just went and wasted that other dye shot because if I would have put my gauge set on right away and charged it, I would have seen we had a faulty compressor. This car needs a compressor for sure, no doubt. I'll put up a troubleshooting chart and we'll cover more of this troubleshooting later on. But that's how you go about injecting the dye into the system using two different methods. And we'll cover more of this along the way. I'm not going to get into real deep detail about it because, you know, refrigeration, there's a lot of theory and whatnot behind it. But I'm just going to cover the basics today. I'm finding the leak and then we'll carry it over to the repair. All right, let's take it to the vehicle. Now this is different than if you're just going about charging the system after the repair. After the repair, we're going to pull a full vacuum on it and whatnot. I'm trying to look at this through the eyes of the viewer and what you guys are most likely going to have. Are you most likely going to have a 30-pound bottle? Probably not. Are you going to have a gauge set? Most likely not. Are you going to go out and invest all this money in this repair? Most likely not, but I do recommend it because this can make you money in the future, and there's no other true way of diagnosing an AC system without all these tools. Without this manifold set, you could even use a manifold set with those little 20-ounce bottles. However, there's only one way to truly diagnose an AC system, and that's measuring a high and low side. So now that we have our dye successfully injected into the system, it's been running for a while, maybe took it for a little ride, brought it back to the shop. Now we're going to start looking for the leaks throughout the system. Hopefully it's just a leak and we just got to repair one of them. So if you could come in closer, I'm going to show you how. You're just going to pretty much scope around anywhere where there's a connection. And as you can see, it's really showing up here. I'm not sure if that's picking it up. And it's also showing up a lot on the high side. You see where it sprayed around a little bit right there. Now I'm going to assume that was where they had their high and low side gauge set, and when they unplugged it, it sprayed out. Now I'm going to continue traveling along all the hose and crimp connections, along with all the connections where there's going to be an O-ring. So wherever two things join together is a source where you may have a leak. Now, I'm not seeing anything up here. Not seeing anything there. And I'm just going to continue doing this around all my AC lines. I don't know if you can shine that in there. I know my AC lines run up around that firewall and down. So I'm looking closely at those hoses down there. And I'm not seeing nothing. And I'm going to take and I'm going to follow this all the way back because this vehicle has rear AC. Another place to look, doesn't hurt to shine it around the condenser and around all your fittings that connect to the condenser. It may be a little hard to get to, but I think you got the gist. Okay, so now I moved underneath the vehicle and I'm tracing the AC lines all the way back to the rear AC evaporator. I determined that everything up front seems good. Now it's hard to check the evaporators, but one way, because they're behind the dash, but one way to kind of get a peek in there is through the drip tube where the condensate drips out while your AC's on, and sometimes you'll pick up some signs of dye inside those tubes. So I traced these tubes, shining the light with no signs. Then I came back to this tube like I was mentioning before, and you'll have one of these up front as well. That's when I signed my light up inside, and it's just loaded with dye. I'm not sure if you can see up in there. And I'm going to use my little light. And this is where having an assortment of lights come in handy. And if you look up inside, I could sneak a peek at that evaporator. And if you can see that green spot, that's the dye that leaked out. And at my point of view, I can see a lot more going on up inside there. And I'll take and I'll expose that evaporator and give you another shot. And can you see where all the dye has leaked out? I don't know if that's showing up better now. Can you see how the green really stands out with this light? And you can see, now you can really see where it was leaking. So this definitely is the main source of the leak. Okay, I just got back from a road test, so I'm going to give you a quick demonstration on this one too. Because I have a feeling with that high side being low like that, the compressor is definitely shot on this vehicle. So most likely, the spot of reference we're going to see that leak at is at the compressor. A lot of times that front seal goes, and that's a really good spot to check. However, I'm going to demonstrate just like I did on the other one. And then there, it looks good. Up here, it glows, because when you see me before, when I took off my lines, it sprayed. So that's what I was saying before. Maybe it's a good idea, a good practice to put a rag around it and try to keep it from spraying all over the place. That way you can see if you got leaks. However, it's pretty obvious that that's what happened, and I don't see any leaks around the AC lines here. And you never know, sometimes you have lines that rub together and they leak as well. Okay, I'm under the vehicle looking up at the compressor. Give you a quick shot with the light. Now you can't really see nothing right now, but I already found it. If you shine a light, you can see where I got, I don't know if you can see those green speckles pretty much sprayed all over the place. Sure enough, it's leaking from that compressor. So we'll have to replace the compressor in this one. But that's a good point of reference. A lot of times it's where it's leaking, or at O-rings, junctions, and whatnot. But that one actually looks like it's leaking around the housing as well of the compressor, if that's showing up. Sometimes the reflection of the light makes it hard to see, but this is such vivid dye that it stands out pretty well, both with and without the glasses. But there it is with just the light. And then when I put the glasses in it, it kind of takes that reflection away, and you can just see the speckles